What's up guys, John here and welcome back to John Moon Studios. In this week's video we're going to be talking about 16th notes. Let's get right to it. On the board I have written the rhythm tree, and the reason why I'm going to show you the rhythm tree right now is so you know how the 16th note gets its name. So right at the top we have a whole note, below that it breaks down to a half note, then we have quarter notes, eighth notes, and then finally we have the 16th notes. Now the reason why they're called 16th notes is because there are 16 16th notes in order to complete a whole note. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using one beat worth of 16th notes. In other words, the quarter note is valued at one beat, and there are 4 16th notes inside of one quarter note because the value of a 16th note is 1/4 of a beat. So the first way we're going to look at these 16th notes is in the most common way it's written in music, which is with 4 16th notes tied together with 2 beams across it. And the way we're going to count these 16th notes is using 1, E, and an A, which is actually pronounced So the way it works is for every beat, we're going to have 4 16th notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So the second way we're going to look at these 16th notes is in this variation where we have 1/8 note and then 2 16th notes right after. If we remember from the rhythm tree, 2 16th notes equal 1/8 note. So inside this 1/8 note, we're going to have the value of 1 and E, which is 2 16th notes. And then we have and So the way we count it is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the third way we're going to count these 16th notes is with the 2 16th notes up front and then the 8th note towards the back. So again, remember that inside of 1/8 note we have 2 16th notes, therefore it's going to have 2 values of the 16th notes, the and the That's what this line means, which means it's being held across the and the So the way we count this version of the 16th note is 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. So the fourth variation of the 16th note rhythm we're going to talk about is the dotted eighth to the 16th note rhythm. So before we get to the actual rhythm and how to count it, let's talk about what the dot actually does. The dot is going to cut the 8th note in half, meaning 1 16th note, and it's going to add it right back to the 8th note. So we're going to grab 1/8 note, we're going to cut it in half, which is 1 16th note, and then we're going to add it right back into the 8th note value. So now let's look at how we count the 16th note rhythm. Inside of the 8th note, we know that usually the 8th note has 2 16th notes inside of it. But now that we have the dot, we're going to add one more 16th note to that rhythm. So it's going to be 1, E, and are going to be all inside of the dotted 8th note. And then the is going to be left outside because here is the missing 16th note in order to complete one beat. So the way we count this variation is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. We have to wait till the very last second in order to say the last beat of the 16th note, which is the beat. I'm going to go ahead and count it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The fifth variation of 16th notes that we're going to talk about is the 16th note right in the front, and then towards the back we're going to have the dotted 8th note. So again, the dotted 8th note has 3 16th notes. We learned that from our previous example. So it's going to be counted as beat 1 on this 1 16th note, and then we have E inside of this dotted 8th note, and then we also have and inside of this dotted 8th note. So the way we count this rhythm is 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E. The sixth and final variation of the 16th note rhythm is going to be the 16th note up in the front, an 8th note towards the middle, and then a 16th note at the end of the beat. So I drew out the 16th note in the basic form so you can see where the notes start to line up. So the first 16th note is going to be beat 1. The two 16th notes in the middle is going to be taken by the 8th note, because again, inside of an 8th note there are two 16th notes. And then at the end we have the final 16th note. So if we look at the counting here, we have beats 1, E and are going to be taken by the 8th note, and then we have the last beat, which is A. The way we count this rhythm is 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 E, a 1. So now that we've learned all of the variations of the 16th note, we're going to go ahead and now use a real life example to count these 16th notes. We're going to start with a time signature of 4/4, which means 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. So now we're going to look at the first example, and if we remember, the first way we count this rhythm is going to be 1 E, and then the 8th note carries two 16th notes inside of it, so it's going to be and then the is going to be held across. So we have 1 E and. 1 E and. Now we're going to go to beat 2, because remember, we need to have 4 beats inside of each measure. So beat 2 is going to be the 8th note, and again, there are two 16th notes inside of the 8th note, so the E is going to be inside of the 8th note. And then we have and A. So here this rhythm goes 2 and A, 2 and A. And now we're going to go to the third beat. So again, we have beat 3. Now in the middle we have the 8th note, and again there are two 16th notes in there. So we're going to put E and inside of the 8th note here. And then the last beat is going to be A. So it's going to sound like this. 3 E A. 3 E A. And now the last one is going to be the 16th note in the beginning and then a dotted 8th note towards the end. So the 16th note is going to be beat 4. But remember, now the dotted 16th note, the dotted 8th note is going to have 3 16th notes inside of it because of the dot. So it's going to have E, and then in parentheses we have and A because it is being held. This last one is 4E. So now to count the entire example is going to sound like this. 1 E and 2 and 3 E, 4 E. One more time. 1 E and 2 and 3 E, 4 E. So now that we've learned all of the variations of the 16th note and I showed you an example on how to count it in a 4/4 time signature, it's now your turn to take a stab at this. So I'm going to freeze the frame for a couple of seconds and let's see if you can get the correct answer. If your answer looks like mine on the board, then you're on the right track. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to count this rhythm while clapping the quarter note beats. It's going to go 1, 2 E, 3 E, and 4 and. One more time. 1, 2 E, 3 E, and 4 and. If you found the information of this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss any of my weekly videos. If you have any questions or concerns throughout the video, please drop your comments down below and I will get to it as soon as possible. Don't forget to share with your musician friends. I will see you all soon.